actually. Just,
What's up,
are
guys?
we live? Hey.
Yo, What's up, guys, and welcome to the Poker Hunters podcast. My name is Richard, and today we have a very interesting guest. He's come onto the Indian poker scene quite recently, but he's been playing poker for over a decade. Uh, Also, his entrance into the poker scene has been on forums, and he's been welcomed by many and not liked by many, and we'll discuss that. Of course, I'm talking about a professional poker player and streamer Vikram Singh. What's up, Vikram?
Hey, what's up, mate? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I was super excited when we actually spoke about you coming on the podcast because I know that you have one of the best work ethics I see amongst a lot of players, and
Right.
also your story is very interesting. So why don't you start with that? Why don't you tell us how you got introduced to poker?
Basically, when I was 18, I went to America to study, and usually you associate that with, an American culture, or I went there, trying seeking Indians. So I left India to seek Indians, in a sense. But when I got there, I did not really like the vibe that I was getting from a lot of like the Indian folk around there, because it was very India centric, and I just ended up in my first year with a roommate
Okay.
who was brothers, two brothers who were born in America. One of them was definitely born in America. I think both of them were, and they have a sister as well, who's also a good friend of mine. And they were born in America. They are Greek and grew up in Germany on an American base. So they were fluent in English in the American, accent. Yet they had a very diverse background. In fact, they didn't know sometimes while speaking to each other which languages they were using. So I got introduced to them, and we used to play a Greek game called backgammon. They call it tavli, and they would call me like a term called golo farde or something like that, which means lucky. So they said like I was getting lucky all the time, but in fact I was going up and looking up strategy for the game. And that was the time. It was 2004, 5, and 6. I think around 4, 5, 2004, 5. When if you put in strategy into Google, you would be like redirected to 2+2, and that's where I got into a little bit about poker. Still did not seriously pay any attention, but the fact is that like my future years there, my roommates, Irish Catholic, two Irish Catholic. Well, one Irish Catholic and another American. He's atheist, so like I guess it doesn't matter. And the other person's family is very Catholic, so it was like a very family-oriented experience with Americans and not with Indians, and that kind of got me into the social circle of Americans. And obviously at that time you're bound to run into someone who plays poker at that time because it was booming. And the person's name was Yod. He used to play online. He still grinds in Detroit one too. We ended up on the same table one time in Detroit recently, a couple of years ago actually. It was kind of funny because I joined the table right when he busted on like a very like cooler spot. So he kind of influenced me into like looking up poker, and it was the days of Absolute Poker and all the old school sites. So I preferred Absolute Poker for some reason, and I deposited probably like again like just deposit any money because you didn't have any problem with like putting money up, or it was just use your credit card. And I would like win $200, cash out. and then like deposit 50 more. And I was strictly like playing sit and goes. I had an account on PokerStars, and I lost a pot. I was playing very high stakes, like 100 NL, like just because I had $100 on it, where it was a badly played spot, but I one outed a river, but I had folded already. And I was like $800 was a big thing for me back then. And I just hated PokerStars from then on. So I was exclusively grinding, well, not even grinding, just like playing two tables of high, actually like $25 and like sit and goes they used to have. And just win a couple, cash out, win a couple, cash out, cash back in. And the thing is, I have done everything that you're not supposed to do as a poker player, and that is what has led me to know what you have to do. So I admit to all mistakes I've made. I think up till probably 3-4 years ago, I was not into any kind of bankroll management. I had a vague idea of it, obviously, and then I ran into coaches, basically, that were very, for some reason, very friendly. So one of my first serious coaches was Martin Mullen, Martin_Mullen. If you look at him, his graph is absolute crusher at 180 mans. He had a challenge on 2+2 of 4K over a month, playing two $20 180 mans. He missed it by $350. Like, just a really great guy. That was the main thing. He taught me how to play stack tables, how that makes you not result oriented because you don't see the results. Obviously, you want to see how a player played, but not really in 180 mans. In 180 mans, you kind of it was a very set strategy. And in fact, from that time, I can actually show you, like, because when I used to study, so from the 180 mans, Martin Mullen, he introduced me to Brad 2002 TJ, who was crushing at that time. He actually, like, he doesn't play anymore. He forecasted what the games were going to be like. He said the games are going to become very nitty because we were at that time, shoving any ace-x from late position, and no one would call, or opening and taking down the pot, and no one would re-steal, nothing like that. The game has changed quite a lot, but he was right that the games were gonna get tight. But I just want to show you how I used to study and how I do still. This is the first time actually I've ever watched a video. So I don't know if you can see it, but basically hand by hand, not only am I looking at, and then there's more notes, and then these are from way back, and I still have them. I have notes on every session I've ever taken for coaching. And it's just basically folds under the gun, blind 50, stack 16, 20, 7-7. And I didn't understand why. I thought 7-7 he should open there. So, that kind of curiosity would always be there because I wanted to learn why he was doing all of this stuff. Not only just watching the video and him saying fold here, shove there. And usually in videos, that's what happens. You just, explanations are quite far and few in between. In terms of studying myself, I used to, again, I've had a variety of coaches. I've had Martin Mullen was then changed from him to it's CML, who also was a 220 grinder. Brad 2002 TJ, I took a lesson with. Glittler, who was an SNG expert. Again, this is all pre-Black Friday. Then post-Black Friday, I also took a post-Black Friday because my back kind of flared up. It wasn't really a fatal injury, but it was a recurring injury over a decade. And so when I came back, there was players like Zed Evron, who they don't play anymore, and Dude of Life. Then the break happened. Then actually the big break happened where was only focused on fixing my back. Uh, I was humbled by the doctor I went to because he told me he had me hanging from a pull-up bar, and he said, "Can you pull up?" I was like, "No way, I have a you do that. You just saw my back. It hurts." He's like, "Look at your like." He taught me that I was hanging off a bar incorrectly because I had these two fingers completely useless. He's like, "Take them off the bar, right?" And I'm still hanging. He's like, "Why? Why are you still hanging when you just taken two of your fingers away? That means you're not using it." So he taught me like how to grip things and the basics of movement, and just shattered the clinical wisdom that exists here in physiotherapy. And everything was basic. Everything built from like the basic fundamentals of human motion. And that is something that was like, I was like, wow, fundamentals are actually like very uh, powerful, because yeah, you can balance ranges, you can have a lot of concepts, but there are so many winning strategies. If you saw the 25K high roller final table, you will see players on different strategies, yet they're all winning players. There was an aggressive player, there was European making some excellent folds, making some horrible plays as well, but also good plays that kind of turned into horrible plays. Uh, so like the chip leader opened and European 3-bet with a 23 big blind stack. That is a very powerful play, no matter what you think, because it really caps the range of the opener to either jam or fold. He cannot call there. I think with a hand like ace-9 suited, even though he had a short stack, I think if he cold calls, it looks stronger. And because he's got a weak hand. Ace-9 suited is still a weak hand versus an undergun opener, even though it's a big stack. And there was a guy with jacks. He could have then 3-bet. Then the undergun razor would have gone away, and if then European jams, I think jacks has a very hard time folding, calling. So, I mean, but it was he was using the same stack and position fundamental. The only problem was that the disparity between his stack and the chip leader stack was so much that the chip leader was basically ICM, using ICM to just and blockers to basically just have a just shove. So what if he loses 16 big blinds? He's just gonna put European under so much pressure. Right. But that play usually works. But that's not the only way to win. There's many ways to win. Now what I do with studying is, of course, coaching.
I actually wanted to ask you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I actually wanted to ask you. I just wanted to sort of get your story straight. So you started playing poker, and when was the time that you actually realized that you need a coach? Because I want to specifically talk about coaching, to begin with. So you had multiple coaches, yes, and
Yeah.
When was the time that you actually felt like that you felt the need for a coach, and the second thing is you felt that there is more to the game than because usually what happens is when you start winning, you sort of ignore strategy, sort of put off coaching or learning because you don't feel the need for it, and you feel like especially when you're starting off in poker. So when was the time that you discovered that you want a coach, and how was that phase like?
It was basically when I was just part-timing poker in America with college, and I was teaching my friend statistics, and there was a question about decks, and that same question had also arisen in another class I had taken, where they both compared the deck of card to a resource, and it is a resource with 52 components. And that really made me realize that there's there's a foundation to what you can do in poker. That means there must be a strategy. And seeing Martin Malin uh, do the PG&C thread made me really get into it. I contacted him. He contacted me a week later. He said he was really busy. Very nice guy from Montreal, friend, became a friend basically, and taught me, how to basically win 180s uh, and transition into MTTs. Won my first tournament. It was the $80 500 max, and the thing is, I had my whole poker community based on off him. So I had never had like a community of people to discuss with, except for like posting hands on 2+2. That's about it. But he introduced me to Baza 88, who's a very good player. He's Australian though, so I don't know if he plays anymore. Like people who are still crushing. He introduced me, of course, to Brad 2002 TJ, and I started taking. After he left, I found more coaches. Uh, from that, you actually find more people, because they know people. So that's when I started taking coaching. But still, at that point, I think till 2012, I was also one of those people who would take a coaching lesson. You get novel information, you get confidence a little bit, you find out some spots, and you kind of play well in the tournament or being one, and you're like, I don't need coaching. And I was like that, and
Yeah, because that's why I was asking, because yeah, I think coaching is very underrated, and I always like to ask about it. Also,
yeah,
the fact that you started coaching, because you sort of felt like there must be more to the game is very impressive, honestly. Too, because usually people choose coaching when when they hit a wall,
yeah, yeah.
when they
Then
don't
they
know where
need
to
it.
go, and
Yeah,
when they actually like lose a lot of money, or face a lot of tough decisions, is when they actually realize that there is something called coaching which I can actually
yeah,
look at. So
right.
yeah, so yeah,
So I
I
mean,
found
like
that
it's
very interesting.
the serial coaching. If you talk about like serially getting coached, it was Fold Mashi, Paul Dando, from BBC Staking. He was the first one who got me back up to scratch as to what was happening after I stopped playing. Yeah, after the second or third lesson, I shipped the big 82. I thought I played an amazing game, right? We reviewed the tournament, and I had a bad beat with aces, and I was left with 7 big blind stack, and there was a raise and a shove, and I was like, well, jack 8 offsuit, I'm just gonna cram it in. Of course, I hit 2 8s, and that was the reason I got the stack back. But that is not what like would serially win me the tournament. It was just like a punt. It was a 7 big blind punt, to be honest. And so he pointed that out. The rest of the tournament was pretty cool. Uh, the and I took many lessons from Full Mashi, but he's a bit busy. A lot of BBC players are busy, and also I had some family issues back then, so I couldn't take coaching. Same thing happened with B Fizz, who he even offered me a staking deal, but I just couldn't take it because I knew I wouldn't have the time to. But he basically, I think, in terms of game selection and also in terms of strategy, because he was the kind of coach who never said, don't, if I would say like I made a mistake, his answer would be, did you? Did you? Are you sure you made a mistake? So he would be like, have you analyzed it enough? So let's see. And he taught me some fundamentals of poker. I had $0 in my account at that time. And in August 2016, I have a lot more. And it's because he asked me to play $4.50 mans and nothing more than $11 tournaments on a $1,000 bankroll. And he said that is actually aggressive still. And my friend from Health and Fitness, Khan Rava, he showed me his post from PG&C where he grinded $43 into 50K after post Black Friday. That really like was like my time to realize that I need something to motivate myself to play these tournaments. And that came from, again, beef is telling me like you need something that is not immersive, yet it gives you quality time, and you're not bored or you're not anything. So I found music, and I love music. If PokerStars banned music, for an example, I would quit poker, because I'd just be like one tabling with YouTube on or something like that. Uh, Also, the type of music you listen to, to some people it's a more aggressive type of music. For me, like it is. For some people, it could be anything, but anything to like keep you a little bit occupied, uh, so that the longer sessions can go like fruitful and that you have motivation. Then I think one of the changes in how I study poker happened also from BFIZ, where he told me how to filter PT4. He told me how to filter out for how you're doing at 2K blinds and up, how you're doing
Okay.
at 100 big blinds, and why not actually study your hand history rather than go over the people you have the most hands on. And first of all, purge everyone's hand for more than 1 year. Just keep them on a separate data if you need it, because you don't want to know what they used to do 1 year ago. And study what they're doing. You'll get more information from looking at players that you have data on. And, uh, that kind of is my approach to studying myself, is looking at other people who I played against, who I lost parts against, just like looking them up, looking their background up, seeing what
It's
my
very
mistake
interesting.
was. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
And
Because
then,
nobody does that.
yeah, and then of course, with beef is like, again, the family stuff was going on, so I couldn't really continue coaching and accept his like staking deal. Then just somehow it led me to my current coach, who's basically my mentor. He's a very nice guy. He's kind of like a life coach, uh, and he taught me like how to just disregard what is an aggro player, what is a nitty player, what is a any kind of player. I missed out on a big score in the 44 marathon, but from that final two tables, I learned so much about poker from that hand history I've never learned, uh, because he basically taught me that if you have an aggro, someone you labeled aggro, and they open from say middle position, and you defend your big blind, and versus a nit who also opens and you defend your big blinds, and the flop is say jack 8-4, and then the river and the turn is brick brick, but they keep betting. The aggro player, if his stack size is like a short stack, 30 big blinds or less, would probably show up with a hand like jack 8. There's a likelihood that he has like a really weird hand that you never thought he would have. The nit will have trip jacks, but the fact that they on that stack size in from that position, versus like say stacks behind them that covered them that they opened, itself should tell you that it's a very powerful play. And I will give you one last example, is from the 109 kickoff, where the Degen fund opened late position, and we were kind of not getting any hands. And I had a guy from IEPPA railing my table, and he could see like I was booming hands to him. I was like, man, like we're just not getting any hands. So the Degen fund opened, and I had 9 big blinds, and I shoved a 7 off. And so my coach asked me, is this a value shove or is this a re-steal? I said, versus the Degen fund, this is probably a value shove. He's like, well, one of the reasons it's not a value shove is because you don't have any fold equity. Because he asked me, what do you think he's calling with? And I was like, I think king queen off and king jack, maybe king 10 even. He's like, no. He's like, the decision, because he's a good player, was made when he opened. Because I never read the stacks near him. And he did, because
Yeah.
he's an excellent player.
He's calling his whole range. I mean.
He's got 2 stacks behind him that cover him. I don't. I have 9 big blinds, and the big blind has a huge stack. So he's folding to everyone, and he's calling anything that he opens versus me. So that's when I realized his calling range is actually 6-7 suited. Even though he might not open that hand, he might fold it, but he's not folding any hand, and he didn't. He made a call with Queen 10. We held up, but that was not the fact. The fact was that I missed the fact that when a shorty opens into stacks that cover him, their range is somewhat strong. And Queen 10 suited is a pretty good hand to do what he did. So basically he asked me questions like, what is the bottom of the value range for this guy to do this? What is the top of the bluffing range, and like top of your flatting range, the bottom of your blind defend, why don't you convert it into the top of your 3-betting range? So these kind of things, they kind of are like in-game kind of scenarios, and that's what he's taught me. And he said after 20 sessions, you'll be a different animal in terms of poker, and I am, because I'm making runs every time I may play a session. Like my downswings have gotten like a lot more like, I know players with like 55% ROI in like say $33 buy-in with 10K downswings. BFizz has a 10K downswing on 533, but he's still 55% ROI. He taught me about bankroll even further. He lessened my scoop schedule, and he just dropped so many tournaments out. Right now, I have quite a lot of money on PokerStars, but he absolutely does not want me to play anything more than, and he even hates me playing $55. And it's confirmed by the fact that BFizz 11, who won that 109 kickoff, which we were pretty deep in, on Sunday was playing the high buy-ins, and then he was playing tournaments that he crushes, which is 3R 180 mans, using one bullet. And he's making a profit, because if he wins, he plays 40 of them, he wins, 6-7. That is the same as playing a 162 on a regular day, big 162, and winning 4K, which is a very low ROI and high variance versus putting in a volume and playing the games you're good at. So why would you ever? So like even my coach and BFizz, both my coach Grayson Nichols, he used to play before Black Friday. They say like when you have a game that you have a massive edge in, why do you want to play the 109s? Yeah, take a shot. When you take a shot, take the whole plot, if it's for sale. But keep it to games that you are going to beat for sure. And, higher stakes is still 90% open. seabed, take it down. Whenever I've been on a final table on a higher buy-in, all the people like Leo82, he was on the top 10 in PokerStars. I think he just dropped off the top 10 list. He had a 95% seabed rate. I had a 97%. I had missed one seabed. And every reg that was winning, everyone was winning on that table. Like there's no fish on the final two tables of this tournament. Everyone who had a decent stack had a high seabed, and everyone who had like a balanced seabed had like trash stacks. The reason being that, people say like balance is something you should like learn if you're playing cash games. When you're 100 big blinds deep every time, you're going to be 100 big blinds deep in a tournament for probably 20-30 hands, unless it's a very slow tournament. Your average stack is like 30 big blinds. How are you going to balance a 30 big blind stack with like top pair, top kicker? Why would you check? Checking is like one of the biggest things that puts you in trouble, because it gives you no information about the opponent. Obviously, if you have a high seabed percentage, you have people who can, play against you. But then let them. when you check and your weaker hands, or check your good hands, you're also losing value, because it's not always that they will like a c bet, or
Right.
like a bet after when check to. So c bet, and it's just been working. Like I have a high c bet success rate, and no one can do anything about it. Like because I c bet so much that like uh, I don't know, like it's just, what is the first of all, like if you open raise someone flats, what is the way to win the hand? First of all, like just if you had nothing, if you didn't even look at your hand, right? What would be the only way you would win the hand? Would be putting a bet out there. What would be the only way you don't win the hand? Would be putting a check. So one of those reasons. But obviously, as you go up higher stakes, there is some need for the balance, but it's not really balance. It's actually again stack and position. It's what
No,
determines.
but you actually brought up a point which is very relevant, because a lot of like players who play tournaments, especially in India, they don't see bet that often, and usually against such a
Yeah,
field, like against a weak field, if you just see bet, you're just printing money,
yeah,
just by putting out that one bet each
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So
Especially
that's
low
super valuable,
stakes. Especially low stakes, and I've seen players,
especially low band games. Yes,
especially
yes,
like when they hit like a gin flop, they check because they're scared that the guy will like fold. But the thing is, you have to maximize your gains. You don't have to minimize your losses. So you have to play as if you know, if you didn't hit the two, say if you had trip twos, if you didn't hit a two and you didn't have a two, what would you do? You'd probably see bet. So why not see bet when you have them? So those kind of things people are afraid of. Same thing applies to, say, when the flop is dry. There's this ideology that the dry flop, you're blocking top pair, so you should bet small. Do you think nines is folding on a king deuce four rainbow flop to a 60% bet versus a 30% bet versus a 40% bet?
yeah.
No, no. Nines
That's
is
more.
calling these days. Nines might
They're
even call
folding.
the turn. And
Yeah.
when you have a two street hand, like a top pair top kicker, unless it improves, or unless you see something about the villain that's sorry, my cat, you should maximize your gains by betting big both streets, because you're targeting a range that does give you value on the two streets, and not a range that you block, or because that's going to fold anyways. If you block a king and he didn't have anything, he's going to fold to any bet. And but he might play back at you if you make it small, and then you're confused. So just go 60%, 60% on two barrels. And one of the reasons I see bet a lot is because I don't double barrel that much, but I triple barrel a lot. So C bet, give up. If someone realizes that you C bet a lot and they're playing back at you on the turn, give up. Uh, just don't double barrel and check the flop. That's like the worst play ever. So C bet a lot, double barrel less, triple barrel more.
That's right.
Uh, and again, the thing is, I make a lot of mistakes every session. And again, last coaching session I had with my coach, he said, if you're not making a mistake, you are uh, you are making a mistake. You're doing something wrong if you're not making a mistake in a session, because that is just impossible to do, almost. And you might have like one session with four tournaments where you just played every hand well, but usually you make some mistakes. So mistakes are fine. You have to like learn from them. The final part of studying, I would say, is the application of it, and that's where bankroll management comes in. And that's why my coach says you don't play more than like average buy-in of like $20 or something. Is the more you play, the more experience you get, the more hands you get, uh, and the more flops you see, and the more you see what works, what doesn't work, and you're not tied to any kind of concept of range protection or things like that, that basically like out level each other. You're just out leveling yourself, and you should just focus on playing straight up, poker, and also being a little bit exploitative. Like if someone limps on me, uh, and I have them covered up to like 25 big blinds, I'm gonna jam with deuce three offsuit. Like they fold so many times. Now, if someone hears this and starts spite calling me, they should also realize that I have a diffuse range there. I'm also going to limp, uh, or even versus button. I'm not going to, uh, three bet ace five offsuit, but I might three bet 10-5 offsuit. So like, I have a diffuse range. I have a diffuse range from not only the small blind, but like the button and the cutoff of limping. Because I realize now people limp from the small blind. Why don't you just go into the tank? Because it just disrupts the game flow, especially in the final two tables. Just go into the tank for no reason. You already know what you're gonna do. You're just like tanking for no reason. You just go in the tank and like surface with like a limp, and one guy will complete, another guy will complete. You make a delayed c bet, you make a c bet, whatever you do, you even make a min c bet. They will fold so many times because it just reeks of monsters. And I've actually learned a play that I'm not going to share, of a very awkward hand at a very awkward stack size from a very difficult position under the gun. And especially if you face aggression versus that hand, it's a very tough spot. So I learned, and I was just like, how, like, should I just take this as a cooler every time? My coach told me, no, you do something that makes your opponent's range wider. Yes, this is a cooler, but what will make your opponent's range wider? And I couldn't come up with anything till he gave me the answer. And then I was like, whoa, you're right. Now they're going to play back at me, and I have the hand that perfectly plays back at people who play back at me
Right.
at a certain stack depth. So yeah, so that means like that is from
So
taking
don't explain a concept that you're not going to share with us.
Yeah, of course, but I'm saying that came from 20 hours of coaching, and
Right.
there will be 20 more hours, and there are repetitions of mistakes I make. There are things I've just completely eliminated from my game. There are things that I learn because spots come up and we think about them. And so I will never stop. Full mushy, very good player. Like I was, he was like, you want to rail me, I am in like 215 big BB. I'll just tell you like my, like you can be on Skype and I'll just tell you like, what I'm doing, what hand I had, I'll boom you hand, whatever. And he also like, by mistake sent me a HH, but he was actually sending it to his coach just to make sure that he played the hand right. So he has a coach as well. So, like he knows the importance of like learning from someone else is a very good thing.
So
But
have you started coaching as well?
I have only coached so far for free, but I have gotten requests. And the thing is, I don't want to exploit people. So my Khan Rava told me it should be on your hourly for your entire career, which is $55, including cash. But I just $20 is fine for a full HH review. Another guy, I kind of bricked a session versus him. Well, he had invested, 30%, and I was like, the coaching session I said I would do for $30, I'll do it for free, because I like fairness a lot, and I hate like exploiting people off the felt. I love it on the felt, but I hate it off the felt. So I have started coaching, and and I think one of the values in the way I would coach is, because what I've learned from my own coach is to ask questions regarding not what the guy's range is, but like what is his value range? What is the bottom of his value range? What is the top of his bluffing range? And when you think like that, then it gives you a better idea of what it is that you're up against. And stacks, like someone opening a 16 big blind stack, and I have nines, is a very tough spot, because if there are very huge stacks around, he's not that loose. He's not going to open that loose. Same thing with, in the money. It's not about the fact that I want to like squeeze into the money. It's about the fact that the people who are actually opening, who have short stacks, even though King Jack suited might be like a positive, positive expected value, if I shove there, it's the fact that they actually are going to be tighter than normal. So you have to take all of those things into consideration, and I think that comes from experience. So I'd rather play than study, play, coach, study, play, coach, study, play, like get coached. That's what I meant. So I like that.
So you went to the. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You were
go
saying.
ahead, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, you went to the DPT this year. That was like
Yeah.
the first time you actually played at Goa.
No, it's the second time. The first time I played was in 2012. I final tabled the 10K. It was the second
Oh
ever
yeah,
live. I
right,
said
right.
second ever live tournament in India. I had played live poker in Detroit before, but tournament no. And it was like a strange tournament for me, because the first time I was ever playing a tournament without antes. And back then it was used to be like, very strange structure, no antes and stuff. And basically, it was the final table. I went in with chip lead. I had
I know about this. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. Amit Jain basically, like, he
Amazing.
like made a big ICM mistake, because we both had a 95% chips. I busted with ace king, but that's not the thing. But then I have played at Rockets Poker Room. I final tabled that tournament, and the only time I have not final tabled is the DPT, which was just strange. That was the strangest tournament ever. Because
So why don't you tell us like what is your impression of like the playing field and like your
I
whole
think
experience?
I think the tournament should not be a 35K tournament for the level of player that's in there. Why? Because it's a pretty high buy-in, the main event, but you don't want you want some value in the tournament. And if your strategy basically has to now be, you get aces, you jam at any stack depth, because you're gonna get called by trash, is not like a strategy that is I like post flop. All the pots I won in that DPT were all post flop, and the bust out hand was pre flop. I had queens, bunch of limpers. I made 10x, and everyone calls, including the people who had not yet called. I was on the button, and then everyone checks, and the pot is the
Okay.
same size as my
Stack,
stack.
yeah.
And the problem is that it's a dry flop, and like I'm not gonna fold queens over pair like on 9 10 3. One of the limpers had pocket threes, so he had a set, and I was like, this is just, if I can get people to fold on like a huge raise, this is just like insane. And maybe it was the deep nature of the tournament that was making people play badly, but in fact, deep structured tournaments, you should be very tight. Like, say you have queen 10 offsuit in the big blind and the cutoff opens. You're two big blinds down, or one big blind down, right? He's opening two big blinds. You call, you're three big blinds down, right? And what is your plan of, getting the win rate up? How are you going to make up for that three big blinds every time? So just fold. And deep stack tournaments are actually like, should be played a lot more tighter than people think. They should be actually like very ABC, just knitted up in the early stages. And that's the adjustment I make with deep stacks. That's why I love deep stacks. Only like PSK win has come in the deep stack. all three of them in a deep stack tournament. Bounty Builder, only one tournament that I've won, and the rest, like it. My game is the freeze outs, and Bounty Builders kind of mess up your ranges for freeze outs too. If you're mixing the two together, they can kind of influence your ranges.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so like they are very good for your win rate, but I calculate my win rate by filtering out win rate corrupting games. So Bounty Builder is a very win rate corrupting game because it's actually giving you money where you just made a pot odds call and stuff like that, and you won like a $400 bounty, or you lost one where you were ahead. So it just like really doesn't do justice to your win rate. I think freeze outs and also like limiting turbos, because again the edge that I have is completely post flop, and so I avoid them. Some people are good at them, but I just don't think like the variance is needed. So there's so many easy games. Like the 11R that play gives you 4K, so much better than the 33 5K, or because even though it's less money, it's a tougher field. It's slightly deeper. It's actually pretty soft during the rebuy period. You make most of your chips, even in the Sunday rebuy. I've made the money 3 times in a row in the Sunday rebuy. It's because in the rebuy period, you make so much money just playing your nut hands, because people just don't fold. So don't expect any fold equity anytime. Never bluff during a rebuy period. Sometimes, like most of the time. So game selection is very important to me, and
Right.
so 3K stacks, for example, are my turbos now. 3K stacks with 10-minute big lines, they're perfect. They actually finish about like only an hour or two more than a turbo
What do
takes.
you think? What do you think? Like coming back to like your Goa trip, what do you think was lacking lacking in the Indian field? Also, I want you to talk about what do you think like you can do to your strategy exploitatively to like play against the like play Indian tournaments in general.
Right. Well, I've played 4 tournaments on like Spartan. I've busted all 4 of them on like strange coolers. But the problem is not that. The problem is not even the field. There's a counter strategy to every strategy. And the problem, so like if someone is playing loose, or if the whole table is like limping, there's just like, just don't play marginal hands. Just play like some value hands, be aggressive, you'll be fine. The problem is that the buy-ins are too high. I think the buy-ins, like I guess now I can just say it. I had a party poker account which was, banished, but all my high buy-in action was on party poker. But now it might be on Indian sites. But I think the problem is that this magic bullet thing, that you can win this one tournament and and that's it, you're like set for life or something, is just not good. It's good if you're a recreational player, I guess, or if you have the money, but I think you have to play within your means so that you can keep winning. Also, when I lose like $300 session, if I break it completely, I have absolutely no problem, because I know that I could have just played like 2 tournaments or 3 tournaments, 3 109s, and still break them, and yet I played here 20 or 15 and I break those. And in a sense that is very like reassuring. It doesn't let your confidence go down. I've seen you see like a lot of Indian players I've seen is when they hit a big score, they hit a big slope down as well. And I think you should fortify your wins by, kind of being a little bit safe. Yeah, take a little bit of shot, take a shot here or there more, but just play it safe and fortify that win a little bit more, and you've got some confidence. You're gonna crush, 22, $33, 44, $55 buy-ins. No need to get into like 215, 1Ks. Just it's just you're up against players who don't make any blunders, who make mistakes but don't make blunders. You yes, you need to test yourself against the best, but you play a 44 marathon, and each time I've gotten a 12th and a 13th in it. You will end up playing some of the best tournament players in PokerStars in the final two tables, and so if you want to test yourself, you'll still test yourself, and even in $22 buy-ins, you end up with like sometimes a tough final table. Now, last win I had was from Big 27. It was the softest final table I've ever played. But I folded like nines. I folded tens to this guy's open because he had shown jacks, aces, kings every time he had folded. But 10 deuce offsuit, no, I called and I like played it aggressively because every time he would bet, I know I have to fold. Every time he doesn't bet, I know he's just not going to win the pot because I'm going to lean on him, and like, so I folded sixes, nines, and like a lot of good hands, but I was doing it for a purpose. It's because those hands are just crushed by this guy because he's a nit. And
So, what is your biggest win? What's your biggest win till now?
14K on America's Card Room, and it was a run, a hit and run. It was a hit and run in the sense that only I have a number of tournaments I've played on that side is 2. So, it was one of those days, I had not, I didn't want to play stars. I didn't realize they had 6-hour late reg. They have a huge late registration. That's what makes it tough. ACR is a little bit tough over $60 buy-ins because it's very slow structure. Even $30 tournaments have like amazingly slow structures. So the good players end up winning. But yeah, that's my biggest. And then I have a bunch of 4 9Ks, and that's it. And after that, it's like the 8K, a big 82. I won twice for 7,000 and 7,900. And then back in the days, like the 22 PKO and the 22 1R 1A, 2.6K scores aplenty, 1.5K, 2K, 3K. Those scores are quite a lot, but like, yeah, the biggest win. But as my coach says, like, he thinks big stuff, like something like big is coming. Like he thinks I'm going to meet him in WSOP tomorrow, next year, because he's seeing what the improvement and everything. So yeah, hopefully, I always consider the future being bright, and 2 big blinds is so I busted the 109 KO on a 2 big blind stack, shoving 6-8 offsuit when it was folded to me. He was like, it's okay, but you have to realize the antes are only 1/15 of your stack, or it's 112.5 of the stack because there's one guy missing. So he's like, you could have waited 4 or 6 hands, I think it was, before the blind hit me. And yeah, yes, it's fine to shove 6-8, but he was actually critical of me shoving 2 big blinds, and I lost. He's like, you could have just waited, I think. So he's telling me to wait on a 2 big blind stack, not because of anything other than the fact that I'm misreading stacks. I'm misreading what is going to be my stack when I'm under the gun. Can I pick up a hand better than 6-8 offsuit? Surely. In fact, in a dull probability says I will probably pick up a better hand than 6-8 offsuit. Although my position would be like, requiring more folds to go through. And probably no one will fold, versus me. Same thing happened when I had ace king suited with 1 big blind under the gun. I was the shortest stack, but I had seen 2 other guys all in. One of them I had seen was 33% equity or 36% equity after the flop. So I instantly folded. I was out of time bank. because I know that that hand is going to get called by a bunch of players, and ace king versus 12 cards, say like, or 10 cards, say like 5 people call, is not doing that well. And since I am the shortest stack, I am the one who's going to bubble, not the guy who already went in. So I folded. I got heat for that. I got heat for like folding ace king suited under the gun with one big blind. Guess what? I ended up fourth in the tournament because I
Okay.
just, and it's luck. But the thing is, in that sense, it was just about ROI. It just doubled my ROI by just folding that hand. And the big 44, the marathon, also taught me to not to let taught me that fish and players in general, even good players, don't have patience. You should have patience. And there was an aggro guy, and all my 3 bets I was justifying, and I was losing because he would 4 bet, and I would just have to fold because he was a good player. He knows what he's doing, and he's a better player than me. And my coach, that's when he told me, he's like, he's doing that for a reason because he knows you're going to do that. So when you have an aggressive player, don't play fire with fire. We end up on a 33 win the button, and we have the same scenario. This time it's a fish though. It's a fish who's just being aggro. I did not play back at him. I folded a ton of good hands that, would have been pretty much like ahead of his value, like opening range. But I just didn't play against him. I won the tournament. I actually like dictated what's going to happen in the tournament. Exactly what happened. It's on the stream, the video. Like I'm literally telling them like I'm going to win this tournament because these guys are just going to kill themselves. And exactly what happened. And we won the tournament. So, that even though I lost out on like say a 13K score, and played badly, but it just shattered some of my misconceptions about labeling people.
That's
Now I
amazing,
label
man.
people. I label people now by stack and position. And I've seen
That's
it again and
awesome.
again that like small stacks, you always end up running into kings. And you think, oh, I had nines, and it must have been a cooler. No, it wasn't a cooler. Someone opening 17, 18 big blinds is not these days. If they're somewhat competent, even if they're like not a competent player, they're tight because even if they're bluffing, so what are they bluffing with? Queen jack maybe. Well, nines doesn't is flipping with them. And so you just have to think about the eye should not be on the hand, it should be on the prize. And that's why you have to let go of hands, difficult hands that are good, basically out of position hands. Don't fold them because they're difficult to play. Because if you just think about 2 streets ahead, you're gonna be like, nah, this hand is gonna get worse and worse. So don't compound the mistake. So things like that, and it's a very like fluid strategy. I'll just limp sometimes, middle position with jack 10 suited. Just take anything like whatever I think is like the right play at the time. If it's too good to fold, but too bad to raise, maybe limp, see what happens. People are re-stealing, so start saving one big blind by limping. Now maybe people will re-shove against you more, but you have a range of limping there, and you are going to call some people, you are not going to call some people. So things like that basically, in terms of strategy. um, Also, I think one of the things with IPPA, for example, or any forum, is that I think there
I,
should
I
be more.
actually I actually wanted to come to that.
Right.
So obviously I didn't want to interrupt you, but
No, go
now
ahead.
that you brought it up, I wanted to speak about like how was your like experience in terms of speaking on the forums and all that, because I know for a fact that a lot of people actually like appreciate your work ethic, and the fact that you always try to educate
Right.
people, and at the same time there were a lot of people who didn't sort of welcome that or took it in the right
Yeah,
spirit.
and
So
that's fine, and I think you can like defend your argument, and you can have a conversation. But you cannot say things like, or like you cannot say things like PO solvers doesn't like c betting on queen high boards. That statement makes no sense. Like when you write it down as a answer to a question, like what about the stacks? At what stacks does it say that don't do that? Versus what kind of players, multi-way pots, single pots? Are you talking about specifically this hand? But you just said queen high boards, so you're just talking about all boards. Secondly, like I've basically had people just come to my like PM and just told me like, uh, bro, you need to like, we get you, but you need to like not speak the way you do. The thing is, I just speak however I want to speak. So even with my parents, like they know everything, like that I play poker. They're probably watching the stream right now. At least my dad should be, because I sent him a link. Uh, they, so I get told how to speak, and I just at that very moment will just block and delete them from my, because you can't, you just, that's just like, it's like I don't know, like I've never encountered this culture in like the United States where someone will like tell you how to like like maybe ask me, I don't understand this on on the post. Maybe just ask me like, okay, I don't understand this at all. But don't say you're talking in Mandarin, for example. Like that is just like, it's kind of condescending. It's condescending to people when you say that your advice is falling on deaf ears. That means you're basically saying that people who are here just don't understand this, but I do, because I've just seen that it is something that will fall on deaf ears. So obviously it implies that I understand it. And just coming to my PM and just being like, don't talk like this. Never do that. If you do that, you're just going to get the block. And that is something, again, my coach has told me, like, it's just like, it's just going to get worse. It's going to get worse. I have friends all over the world, and, I fight with so many of them. And, like the fight does not, end up on the dinner table. You still have dinner together, and you might have the argument still brewing in the background, but you don't fight on Sunday, for example. Like Sunday, don't fight. Like, don't bring up the past. Don't do this. Don't tell someone how to speak, first of all, like ever. I don't think you should ever say that to anyone, no matter whether they're younger or older than you. And just when you there's a quote, even like, you find out more about someone when you actually fight them. And
Right.
I think in this day and age, you don't really literally fight people. So I think it's the conversation that you have with them, and how you resolve that, meeting in the middle, or convincing the other person, or you getting convinced, is, I think, a good, better approach than just being like, condescending. So I have kind of stopped putting up strategy posts directly on IBPA, because some people don't understand the play. So then you have to write it down, and
It doesn't
then
end
it's
well.
just,
It
yeah,
doesn't
it
end
doesn't
well.
end well. And I actually, we're having like some kind of a problem with like a issue with our business, where now this guy who's very adept at like network security, for example, said, actually do not present more evidence. The more evidence you kind of present, even though it looks blatantly that you're right, it actually looks bad. So you have to think about other people's perception. Maybe I am bad at that. Maybe I can like simplify my statement, but then that would require thinking like I do when I write, which takes time. So if I write a blog on Poker Guru, I write for Modern Machine India. It takes time for me to even fill in like a 5 word sentence sometimes. Uh, but on IPPA, you just type. But I think so. Maybe I need to adjust there, but I still think there needs to be clarity, because suppose Apple said, buy our stocks, invest in us, but we cannot give you quarterly reports because we don't have the staff for it, or the staff is going to be distracted, so it's actually going to be not good for the company. Then don't sell those stocks, because it's your obligation to report to investors how you're playing. So I think that doesn't happen enough on IBPA, and people come up with excuses. I've invested in someone out of trust. That is okay. Then that means that's fine. Okay, if you've done that, that's fine. But I think if someone are investing in people who are winning and they're expecting something back, it shouldn't be like, oh, I just had a brick session. No, I post every single bad hand I play, every single like good hand. Uh, Try to give as much information, even while streaming. I type very fast. Maybe that's why, and maybe some people don't type fast. And the thing is, like, insinuating that is distracting is the same thing as saying there's only a 5-minute break every 55 minutes. No, there isn't. You can get up, you can stretch while you're playing 6 tables, and use the 5-minute break for something else. And if you play on a laptop, you can take it to the kitchen, cook food there, if you're playing low tables. And that's something both Beefiz and my current coach told me, just do things like that. So I think these things like, oh, there's only 5-minute break, let him play. No, like I've never had a tiring like session unless it was like 13-14 hours. So I think it's just that there's an obligation. I feel an obligation to be fair to like people who are invested in me. So I thought I was feeling well yesterday, and I played like 7 or Sunday, because I didn't want to miss Sunday, So I played like 7-8 tournaments, and I played pretty C game. Like I called off my last table with 23 big blind with 7s from a 23 big blind shop, like exactly my stack, and I think that's a fold. He had pocket kings. It's not results oriented. I think 23 big blinds is a huge stack to just cram with 7s. I realized, I played the whole session kind of bad, starting with a couple of bad leads. I returned the money. I was like, it's only $100, man, $150. You guys all get your money back because I didn't play the way I should, and $150 doesn't matter to me. I was just selling because, I also have a bet for August that I missed in July by $50, $450. So we pushed it to August because it was in 10% margin of 5K profit. But now I think I'm gonna lose it because I missed one Sunday. Hopefully I can put in some volume, because it literally takes one tournament. And this is what I told them while we were setting up the bet. And these guys are friends of mine, but they fight. Okay, they fight with me, but they quote that line again and again. You keep saying it's just one tournament can win me the whole session. So you can't say that I missed a Sunday because of a fever. So let's renege on the that.
Right.
So but I who knows? I might win the Sunday million over. The future is always bright.
Let's hope that. Let's hope that.
I
go to every Sunday thinking I'm gonna win the Sunday million. So
yeah, it's a very soft tournament. It's a very soft tournament. It is another tournament that I would advise like any listener to play extremely tight in the beginning. You have a big stack. Don't spew on mediocre hands. Don't flat, mediocre kind of hands, medium strength hands. It's just not a tournament to do that. It's a tournament to kind of get value, but also it's a huge field tournament, and it's an important tournament. And I think the deep stack nature leads a lot of good players to bust out very early. But just to give you a notion, I am down about 2,000 or 3,000 in Sunday Million over my lifetime because I don't play them that often, uh, and I've only cashed maybe 5 or 6 times at max. So I can say I played that tournament bad too. But on the other hand, Sunday kickoff, I play really well, and I'm actually ahead in that in terms of like profit. So it could just be a sample size because I didn't play that many. But one of the reasons is that early on, a little bit of focus away from the fact that it's a Sunday Million is good. You should play it like a normal tournament, but it's a deep stack tournament. You should think of it like, you know, I have 200 big blinds. Do I need to gamble for 40 more big blinds? You know, or should I not? It's like one of the things, big stack bully thing is kind of out now. It's an ideology. Don't bully when you have a big stack, because people who are good at poker know that big stacks bully. So unless you're on the final table, the big stack bully thing is one of the things I've noticed with people whose hand histories I've seen, because I have taught people for free, is that when they get a stack, they spew so much. They build up they had 14 big blinds, they ran it up to 70, 71, and then they just blow it back down to like 30, and they miss the final table or something. And it's all because they started playing queen 10 suited under the gun, and just like and people expect them to do it. And when they get 3-bet, they're like, oh, I have 70 big blinds, I'm gonna call here. So I think one of the things with that is it also applies to the beginning of the tournament. When you have a deeper stack, that you should play slightly tighter and not looser, which a lot of people do.
That is superb advice. That is super advice. So tell me, in terms of like the Indian players, like do you find anyone that you personally like? Like, is there any favorites
Yeah,
that you have in the Indian
yeah.
players?
I think I haven't spoken to him for a while, but I think Alok Ranjan. I think he's a very good player. He's one of the first players where I like learned, probably he didn't tell me this, but he was using the fact that there's the position and the stack factor. But he folded queens to on a 9, 10, 7 or something like that flop, versus a Nick that was like running really low on stack, like on stats, and he donked the flop, and he just open folded in a bounty builder where he covered him. So Alok covered him. He folded, and that kind of, and same thing with Fold Machine. One time we were doing his hand history review, and I saw him like fold aces, snap fold them, and when you see that, it's really like tells you like the hand really doesn't matter. But yeah, Alok, I think Sharad Rao is a good player. We had a little bit of falling out, but it's fine. It happens. I think he's still a very good person. Like, I would not judge him for a spat, for example. If we had on Facebook, he could have been in a mood, I could have been in a mood, whatever. And other than that, I don't know the history of Indian poker players that much. I know Aditya Sushant used to or still plays, and I saw him. When I joined the IBPA, like he used to be on like Sunday Million deep runs and stuff like that. And then Jasveen Sagal, I saw him at DPT this year, and also the year that I final table in 2012. So like, obviously anyone who's winning back then and is winning now, I think has a game. Whether or not it has leaks or not, has adjusted and is not making blunders, because balancing your range is not going to make you be a losing player, nor is c betting too much. but making blunderous mistakes and not taking these fundamental like stacks and positions into account is what is going to uh, actually hurt your winning. Because if you see the again the 25K final table, there's the player who's really aggro, there's a player who's European who is magic, like the hand that he plays with like a top pair with like such a small stack and he folds and the guy shows a straight. And there's a commentary going on by one of the guys from Upswing Poker, the Indian guy, and they were like, "Yeah, like he's right." They were first like, "Why is he checking there?" And he played like that hand, like he knew what cards this guy had. This opponent, I forget his name, but the fact was that his opponent was a loose player. So when the flop came, he knew that suited connectors are in his range, and literally like I don't know how he did not even. I think he put in one bet maybe. It was just insane that he like folded that hand with that stack size. That just tells you that like he's on a level, that is really like high up the order, in the sense of like strategy. But it's not really strategy. I think it's more like a sense and intuition of like what is happening, which is basically experience. It's the intuition that you get is just playing hands and having a experience. So yeah, and I also think there's too many people in the Indian circuit that want to play higher buy-ins, and that's fine. But I don't think you should unless you have like 100,000, in your bank account as savings, because obviously the volume on Indian sites is not high. You cannot be like, you're not gonna end up 100K down on one day. You might, but unless it's a Sunday, it's probably not gonna happen. But still, when the variance does hit, it can hit, and it's hit. And the thing is, like people see people winning graphs. What is happening is there's like a 30K sample graph, and if they actually zoomed in to that graph, they will see like 20, 30K downswings. It's because that player can absorb that downswing and still continue playing at that level. And I think that's one of the good things about staking. But when I see a staked player, I see their winnings as half of what their graph shows. So that's the other part of it, that you just lose half, and then if you're selling on it too, then you're just not making much money at all. But yeah, so I think I think maybe it's just like regulations in Indian poker sites, like maybe have more tournaments, but maybe have have big tournaments. And I think the structure has changed completely, and it's become deep. I was talking to Faiz Alam. I think he's a member of IPPA and just won, like he was third in that tournament last Sunday or something, or yesterday. And I was just asking him, I was like, I don't even have PokerBazi on my computer. Can you tell me like what the structure and everything was of the tournament? And he said it was pretty deep stacked and it didn't have that many runners. So I was thinking, my party poker account has been shut down. Maybe I'll take my higher buy-in action to Indian sites. Maybe start lower, see how it is, because I have not had a good experience. Mainly because it's very hard to play players with completely unknown ranges.
Yeah, you will definitely break a couple of tournaments to begin with, because
Yeah, yeah, I have
it's
already
different.
break them.
Different.
It's different. Like also like 888 is a bit different in the sense that it's not aggressive as much as stars is, but it's still tough. Uh, it is the structure is better. Obviously, rakeback is better. People don't understand what rakeback means. I had by the time they switched over to the new ones, I had made up 9 109 tickets and 5 $22 tickets that I just bought. Because I don't play, like I'll play a hyper once if I have like say 52 stars coin, I'll like play a hyper turbo, or if I have like 230, I'll just sometimes chuck in for a big 22 or whatever. But I only buy stars coin because if you do the math, the chance of you winning a turbo, hyper turbo, versus you just buying a ticket is actually equal. Over the long run, it's going to equalize. But on a hyper turbo, you can actually go on a downswing, and and then the equalization happens, or the variance kind of equalizes slowly. But you just collect them and buy tournament tickets. And
So
so
now that you now
now
that
that
you
I've actually sorry,
yeah,
now that
sorry,
I've
sorry,
this
sorry.
chess thing has happened, like I should by now in January I would have had $209 tickets. I have barely won. Like I have barely enough stars coin for one, and that's just, and I have earned like a $10 and a $5 prize, but I don't like it. I think it's too random. So that's one of the reasons I like 888, because it's not. But yeah, I mean, like the main thing I would say is like whatever site you're playing on, say okay, it has bad rate. If you're not having fun, and if you're not focused and having fun, you should not be playing. I think you should be playing less tables then. If you're not being able to update your investors, you should be playing less tables then. And like I said, if you watch my streams, like it's not even the break and I'm dancing, and just doing bare things with my hands, because like I'm listening to music I love, and new music I like. Every Sunday, before every Sunday, I find an album that I want to give a try, a new album on, iTunes or something, and I'll
Okay.
just rinse it, and it's not like that the same songs are playing again and again. And I love dancing. So I do that, and it just keeps you motivated. It keeps you, sometimes you hear a lyric and you're just like, I just want to beat my opponent. Obviously, there's a mental side. I have notes, what do my opponents lack? What do I lack? What do I need? What do I don't lack against them? And I think that is actually important, because like I was sick and I was playing tournament, 7 tournaments I played. I bad beats in the first 3 tournaments, and that just led to a complete crash of the entire session. And I didn't even look over the other screen to see my these notes that I have and all of that stuff. So I think that playing deep bankroll wise, I think being a model professional is something that players lack, because if you are a poker player, you should play it as a professional. And if you're a professional at an office, you don't have a success. Say you don't get an order if you're in the sales team and just like start yelling, "Yeah, I got an order," or do like non-work things. You continue with your head down and continue playing. So if I actually started posting all the wins I have, or the 13th or the 15th, like I would just like hog up IPPA, because if I, in fact, if it was like 450 180 mans, literally everyone that I play, unless I get a bad beat, I am in the money. It's such an easy tournament. It's such a variance killer. Play it, and embrace logic and deductive reasoning versus a bottom up approach, which is where you already have a concept in mind, then you see a stimulus, and then you make a theory based on that, instead of observing first, then making a theory, and then making a conclusion out of it. So I think that is basically what poker strategy should be. In any lifestyle, that should be your strategy of life, is to just have a bottom-up approach of, and that is one of the reasons maybe I have a polarizing image in IBPA, is because I have a bottoms-up approach on everything. uh, deductive reasoning. I know how like the brain works, like how it learns, what is a schema, what are the things that I know, and how priming happens, and all these things. Why like I might think King Jack is good because I've been like three betting it and it's been like going through for like the last 10 hands. So it must go through versus like an 11 big blind stack if I three bet whatever. I would never do that. But so that is like ideological thinking, because you've
That's
made
great.
an
That's
op-
great.
you made a conclusion. I've been winning on King Jack, so I'm going to win again, instead of like taking the spot on its own merit.
And I'd also like to congratulate you on writing that blog, because I just read it today, in fact, and I think it's genius. I think it's very interesting. Like,
It,
if you actually like understand it,
yeah,
like if
it
somebody who, yeah,
yeah, and if you think about, if you look at the 25K high roller, like, because this video was floated around in IPPA for like a lot of like reposts of it. You see what European did actually in that hand. He with ace nine suited. He had 20 big blinds or 23 big blinds. He three bet the chip leader. Obviously, the problem was the disparity in stack and ICM and all that, but he knows that a small stack three bet looks strong and he's weak, but he has a hand that flops well. So if the chip leader decides to flat him, he has a hand that flops well. But obviously the chip leader had a huge stack disparity and he just crammed it all in. Obviously, I think, and he cannot take that spot even with like, I think ace queen offsuit, I think, is a fold there. Ace queen offsuit shouldn't even be ace queen offsuit should be a flat there, because I think that's actually a very good hand to flat there in position versus a chip leader who's opening pretty wide. So whenever you have a value hand, why are you three betting when you
right,
can't be perceived as bluffing? So
right,
some things like that, and that's just like scratching the surface. And if you think about hands like that, and if it takes you time to think about hands like that, then you need to drop tables. Otherwise, you're just playing on autopilot and missing so much on what stacks and positions and depth and the tournament stage. They all matter so much in MTTs rather than cash game concepts that have leaked into MTT games. So I think focusing on those is fine, and I don't think either. I think there are many strategies to win a tournament, and as long as you don't make certain fundamental mistakes, you're going to win tournaments. And just not win. You're just going to like have a good healthy win rate. Even if you're on a downswing. But I think there are certain things though you can do that don't make you win, which is a different topic. But yeah, there's different strategies to win. That's why you see different types of players on a 10 to 5K high roller. But I think the approach that they're all using is somewhat similar, in the sense that the importance that they're putting on is each other's game of obviously, but also their stack sizes, their position. I've started flatting a 7 offsuit a lot from small blind, like some hands like that, because it actually is ahead of the range of a button open. But I don't want to bloat the pot from the small blind. And if I hit an ace, I get paid off almost every time. Also, it diffuses my range, like it confuses the player. So if it's an 8, 9, 10 board, like I can rep that board so hard when I flat there. So like things like that, like it's just like comes to you the more you practice. If I'm
very
single
fast.
tabling, these spots come to me so much more than if I'm like 4 tabling, than if I'm 6 tabling. But if I'm 8 or 9 tabling, then it kind of like becomes a bit tough, and I see that I'm missing spots and things like that. And obviously, aggression is important, but you have to realize that calling a 3-bet is also aggressive. It's just passive aggressive, so you shouldn't call a lot of 3-bets.
Right.
But people would call that like a nitty play, but it's not. It's someone has just called a 3-bet. That's, I think, a pretty powerful play. Uh, but it's just, so those are again labels, So the people put a label, they collapse their ability of the player. They will say like, okay, he flatted a 3-bet, he must not be able to play. Instead, they should be focusing on collapsing their range. One of the best things to collapse someone's range and to find out what they have is to bet. Checking does not give you any information at all. Betting always gives you more information, especially when you're out of position and you need that information, because the in-position player will have more information than you do. So I think, things like that, from the poker side. But the mentality has to be there. The mentality, the confidence. It's confidence. It's not vanity. It's a competitive mentality that you should have. You should have motivation. You should have bankroll management. Man, if I had $100, I wouldn't play more than 11 cents. A certain goes. That's it. Like, that is actually what the bankroll management. It shouldn't be $1. 100 buy-in. No, it has to be 11 cents, and you take shots at like $2 or $3. That's how you grind it up. And obviously, so that is my take on like poker in general.
Super.
And the Indian scene just lacks that. I think that it lacks when you see someone selling 80% of their action. I just reeks that they don't have the bankroll to play these tournaments. They want to. Everyone wants to. I want to. But I am being stopped by my coach. Like, I've been told to hit a certain bankroll before I start playing them. To get even better before I start playing them, because they're not going anywhere. They're going to be running every day, So yeah, so it's and I take the action on softer sides if I play a high buy-in, and it's been working well. Yeah,
I feel like I haven't I have spoken about the stake backpacks and people not doing studies and over thinking that they know poker too well. Like, it happens so frequently, and I think I've spoken about it way too much, so I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you play like the big 162 with 123 players, you will win it. We know more often, but you will win more money in the big 22 in the long run, in my opinion.
For sure. And I actually wanted to take a question really quick. Avinash on the chat wanted to ask. So you mentioned about choosing to take tickets for your 109 instead of playing hypers with star points. So how did you do that? How can you use?
Basically, if you go to like the online store, there's online tournaments in the online store.
I missed that. The question is, why is it more profitable?
It's not profitable.
Why is it more profitable to get star points instead of playing hypers?
Because I will give this person the math on it, but I was told by Khan Rava. Khan's the word is his now poker star's name, because he moved from Panama to somewhere else. And he showed me how because he's friends with Slayer V1 fan, so he's fans with a hyper turbo giant, right? And so this guy studies hyper turbos. He knows that your win rate or the expectancy of that tournament, if you play enough of them and you play them well and you play them good, I actually earn you the same money if you use those 2,000 stars coins or whatever to buy a $20 ticket, because in the long run you're only actually going to win $20. It's different from satellites, though. It's different from, say, like deep turbo satellites or deep satellites. Definitely play those. They're pretty value tournaments. Obviously, there's a huge gap in strategy in those because the stacks are so condensed and the flat payout structure is flat. But the thing with hypers is, yeah, definitely play a hyper if you have like a couple of hundred stars coin. But I would rather suggest save them for a high buy-in tournament. because you can literally, even if you have a capped limit on buy-ins for stars, if you win tickets or if you buy tickets, you can play higher buy-in, and it over the long run it's going to serve you better. And if you read Khan Rava's blog on 2+2, it's an epic blog, $43 to 50K, and he made it. He was on 2,000 in like 6 months, $2,000, playing 11 cent sit and goes on merge poker. And he would always aim for the tickets. He would be like, oh, I got an $11 ticket. I got an $11 tournament ticket. I got this ticket. I got that ticket. And, and I asked him why, and he showed me how they're same. One more thing I would touch on is with respect to Indian community is the M markup. Markup is based obviously on your return on investment and the market. Right, so obviously we can't change a player's return on investment, but I think someone with like 20% return on investment should not have that big of a markup. I started using it because everyone was using it, so I think we need to clean up the market in terms of markup, and it should be really low. I think it's exploiting people because they don't care if they're buying 10%. They don't care if they pay $23 or $25 or $27. But that's again an exploitation. I think that should stop, and there should be some kind of like you just can't just be like, oh, I'm winning a bunch of tournaments, I'm gonna mark it up to 1.35. I remember there's this post about like a 4.0 markup. I don't even know how that works. That's just like looting money.
I think eventually, like the markup thing is something that people are talking about, so it's a good thing. And the second thing is that the better players have taken initiative to like try selling action without markup and stuff like that, which is great. Sharad has started that group, which is amazing.
Yeah,
and it's also
because
about
the
education.
variance, it's the variance that it reduces is enough. The variance that it reduces, is so enough.
I think I've spoken about markup so much that a lot of people already know about it, and the other half are people who actually know about it, but still are saying that if people are buying, why should I not
Yeah, that's the market.
Sell it.
That's the market, and
so I think it's all about like education. Like the more poker progresses, I think it will be like a very gradual progression.
People don't understand the value of it goes with chips as well as buy-ins and your dollars. Like a couple of chips saved here, a couple of big blinds saved here, saved there, lead up to a bigger stack of like 10-15 big blinds, where if you double up, that's 30 big blinds more than you should have had if you had played them poorly. It's the same way with poker. With higher buy-ins, or whether it's you paying markup on tournaments. It's one of the reasons why people hate the Rakeback system, is that those things matter a lot, because they know that there are downswings, and if they're playing regularly, even brick and mortar casinos have a pretty good Rakeback system if you have those palm cards.
Right.
So like Stars is just making this into like this like sports, like it's like a game, like a very like childish kind of like very graphic friendly, the zooms and the not the zoom, like the I hit a nut straight flush draw, and somehow the yellow line that you get, it just like went way like, and I was like, what the fuck happened? And then I got I busted that tournament, and then I got 20 stars going and like 20 booster point. And that was after $100 of buy-ins.
Wow.
And I was just like, what the hell? Yeah, it's just insane. And like I said, I have not updated my PD4. So it's using the same Rakeback system. It's even before the changes, Stars was making more money in cash games, like, and Alok Ranjan would admit to this too, because he's seen it over 40,000 hands. I've seen it over 20,000 hands even on in cash games. Stars makes more money than you in a pot, like over the long run. That's just insane already. And now I don't even know what they make. And no one knows because it's so
Yeah.
random. And it's just going to be like the spin and goes. There's going to be someone who just binks like $1,000, and it's going to be like, oh, the rakeback system is awesome. They are attracting players, but they have to have some structure to the rakeback system.
I think the stars rate back, the rate back thing is. I mean, at the face of it, looks horrible, and a lot of pros already advocate that. And to
Look
really
at
break
games.
down like what stars has in mind is like a very deep conversation. I feel I don't think we should
Yeah.
venture in there because
No, I actually, if you think about it, like video games, for example, they attract recreational players as well as pros. What's his name? Primordial AA, a very good heads-up player. Another epic thread that must be read is someone came out challenging him to a heads-up game, heads-up for roles, and everyone on 2+2 was like, Primordial, Primo, come on. And he came on and crushed the guy. Uh, he plays a lot of like video games. Even the video games, the level up is structured. The leveling up is so structured in video games, and it attracts people. Even some sports scientists say that like apps like calorie counters and run keepers, the fact that they give you a gradual progression of leveling up keeps you motivated. I think they should learn from that and reduce the randomness in it and have a friendly structure for a recreational player, but not this random. Like I have no idea what my next chest is going to bring. It's now going to be a silver chest. I have absolutely no idea because I got more sometimes of a brown chest than the blue chest, and I don't even know why they change. Why I have sometimes like a booster bar. It's so complicated, but it's still like it's bad. So that's why one of the reasons I don't play high buy-ins is because you don't
it's
get
really
a
bad.
value.
Really bad for sure. Yeah.
It's very important. Rakeback is very important. Rakeback markup very important for tournament
Very
players,
for sure, for
for any
sure.
player actually.
For any player, I think a lot of like back in the day, a lot of people used to play just to make rake backs
Yeah,
and,
yeah. Like
just to
Flair V1 fan, used to do that. I know Alok Ranjan. He got Supernova or whatever. The five red stars.
yeah, he got
And
supernova. Yeah,
yeah, he got Supernova, and then that was the couple months later. It was a scrapped. Syphosis. He was going for Supernova Elite or something, and uh, he like I don't even know what he thinks now. Like of stars just randomly pulling that whole like concept, and I think it was a really great concept. I think maybe add maybe levels to it or decrease some levels, maybe make the gap between platinum and supernova more. But I think it was working okay, even though the rakeback system, ever since we had stopped having tournaments, because the 54 KO used to be 40 plus 10, which was the knockout, plus 4. For the $4 was the rate, so 40 plus 4. Now I think that even the big 44, I don't know if it's 40 plus 4 or is it 41.38 plus or 39 point something. So like the 750 used to be 7 plus 50 cents or something like that. Now it's like 6.98 plus this many. Like I don't understand why they have that. It
yeah.
makes filtering hands on poker tracker so hard because like now your binds are kind of like really strange. So it's I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know. Like I've heard we're gonna run it once, maybe coming up with the site. I would love a global site that can compete with PokerStars. That's a little bit better than 888 in terms
Yeah,
of software.
but that's probably going to take a lot of time because like the market share PokerStars has
Yeah,
is massive and
yeah,
anyway, like I just have one more question for you in the
yeah,
chat, and
yeah,
after that we'll end this discussion. Any
yeah.
reason for any reason for not venturing into cash games because you like deep
Uh,
structure games and post round
Yeah,
play?
in fact, this is the question that my coach asked, like me and my coach Gray talked about last session. he told me to just not stop playing Zoom, and I was playing it instead of say 180 mans or say a turbo tournament in the end of the session. I would just, because I know I could come out of it anytime, I never tilt. But in a say like the Big 27s, the last tournament, I've had a bad session, I might tilt it off, or I've already won something, I might not pay that much attention to it. But cash game, I since I can just get out of it anytime, I will play with focus. He asked me to not play that. The I did dabble in cash a little bit. Uh, the thing with, and like people like Full Machi told me, like it's a good way to like practice 100 big blind play. But the fact of the matter is that it skews your ranges for a specialization that you have. So I have a specialization in MTTs. Playing 100 BBD, I think maybe teaches me a little bit about, obviously I already know like 100 big blind doesn't mean you go in all in with top pair top kicker. So I already know that much. So there's no reason to practice it, especially unless you're going to play very slow structure, like very slow.
Basically, you just like to MTTs better, and
It's just like, I think if you're specializing in something like Slayer 1v fan will never play a cash game, because I think it will mentally skew his ranges a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not him, but maybe someone else. It just, I think, will skew the ranges, and that's the reason with PSKOs, with the bounty builders, it can just skew your ranges. Obviously, you can be very good player and not let that affect you, but it affects me. So I kind of play one, say, bounty builder with like 4 freeze outs, and I'm an MTT specialist, and the ranges are very different and very dynamic. So I still like Zoom cash because it's a bit dynamic, and you have players who have like 400 big blinds who will just punt it off. I won a 700 big blind stack on an ace high flop with aces versus kings. Just the guy just didn't fold kings, so that's very good. That's a lot of money. So I like that because it does have a little bit of tournament dynamic too in it. You can exploit people, but I mean, my coach told me just, you're specializing in this. You're a professional MTT player. You're not a professional poker player. Yeah, you can go play live 1-2 in Detroit whenever you go visit. But I would just, save the energy also. Like just.
And the other thing, maybe I'm wrong, but you can correct me there. But the other thing is, with the rake increase, I think you're never going to be able to beat the cash games.
Yeah,
on PokerStars,
especially if it's not Zoom, you won't be. And the reason I'm beating Zoom poker, because I looked at my stats, is not because I'm beating it on like a consistent level like 50 NL. It's because I ran hot on 200-300 big blind pots. I've just won. I think I've lost 200 big blind pot and won all of them above 100 because they are bad players. And so now I realize that I'm actually not winning in it. It's just a perception that I'm winning, but it's just the fact that people are making mistakes. But it's still variance, right? 200 big blinds, you have aces, you're not 100% sure you're going to win the hand, and you're not meant to win it 100% times. So he was like, just chuck it out just because it'll save you energy. It'll save you energy. Another thing I do, and I would advise people to do, is once you have already bought in, all your tournaments have started, you have your rebuys and add-ons complete, make sure that is for sure there. And you are a type of person who might have a bad session and might spew by playing more and more and more. It's like the worst thing a poker player can do. Just self-exclude yourself for 12 hours. I do that all the time. Every time I have this in my mind that, there's a big 33 also coming up in an hour. It's one of my favorite tournaments. It's my tournament that I've won. 33 stake is the one I've won the most in. So I love that tournament. So it's I want to play it, but I have not in the condition to play it. You don't even know you're not in the condition to play it. So any inkling or any bad hand I play, anything, even on Sunday when I was 7 tournaments, I was like, maybe I'll just trigger the 7.5 Sunday million. I knew I was never gonna win it, but I still wanted to play it. So what I did was I just went into the tools, just pull the trigger on the self exclude button, and I excluded myself for 12 hours. Now, of course, you can't do any transactions or anything, but you can still, even if you disconnect and even click out of the client, if you're in a tournament, you will come back in it. If you're registering, all of them will unregister. But that's another thing to control, tilt, because a game is more than no game. It's far better than more games. Sorry. So I think if you feel like you're slipping, just lock yourself out of stars. They
That's
give you
solid
such a
advice.
great,
That's solid
and I
advice.
think with like Beef is liked it. Like my coach, ex-coach, he loved it. My coach right now loves it. He says though I should have the willpower to not do that and still be able to not register. But if it right now is not something I have, maybe don't maybe do it. So just to start off, just to start off, and also if you don't feel like playing, but you want to play, you get the itch to play, just play 1 tournament or 2 tournaments. You play better at them. You'll still play. You know, you can have different types of structures in your session. You play 2 tables. If you bust, you can register 2 tables after a 1 hour break. Then you can register. If you don't, run it up, you can register. You can play a 9 hour session like that. You can play a 9 hour session of registering everything that's coming up. It just depends, but I mean, you should just base it on like how you play the best. Yeah, and I think that's one advice I would give to people who go on tilt, because I've seen that a lot too. Not only in game, but after the game, playing horrible tournaments just because they're like, okay, well, I have $100 in my account, $111 in my account. There's a $11 turbo tournament. I am 100% guaranteeing you a recreational player will play that $11 tournament because he'll be like, oh, I'll just be on 100 exactly. So
Yeah.
that mentality happens to me too. Where I will be like, something that happens to me with bet sizing. I'll sometimes see that the bet sizing can be exactly as the top price, say like 2439, right? So I'll just put it in. But my coach told me stop it because it's losing you time bank. I was like, I just love numbers, but he was like, nah, you're just wasting time. Just have numbers that you click and then you just bet, because it doesn't matter if you make it to 2440 or 2450 or 2439. But I'm just like, because I have the lobby open, I'm just like, oh, the first price 2439, I can make it 2.349x. So so those kind of things, I think.
Yeah, I'm the guy who does the $11 tournament. Like I am that guy.
I am that
Anyway,
guy too. But I'm that guy too. Actually, like I had 10,000 in $11, and I registered the $11 tournament only because of the $11,
yeah,
and
got to stop
that's
that.
it.
Got to stop that.
Like, what does
Yeah,
it matter? Like, you might as well use it when you're in a better state of mind. You might win 1,000 out of it. Now you have 11,000. Are you going to play the 1K to get it back to 10,000? No, you're not. So it's the same logic. But yeah, so those are some of the things that I struggle. I've done everything that a poker player shouldn't do
yeah.
in my career.
Sorry to cut you off, but I'll just take this question real quick. Avinash asked, it's a very interesting question actually. You mentioned that when you bet you also get a lot of information, and it's always better than checking, and you
Mm-hmm.
were advocating like a high C bet
Uh-huh.
strategy. But
Uh-huh.
isn't betting for information a very old school like thought? Like nobody bets
Uh,
to information today. So what's your like thought on that?
it's like define old school, because the thing is, I have a success rate of 78% on an average 85% C bet. Now, obviously, this is a little bit skewed because sometimes the hand goes further and I might lose the hand, whatever. So the C bet success doesn't really matter there. But say you open and the blind defends, and the flop is ace for ace. You give me European, you give me the Degen Fund, you give me Are You a Pretty Girl, Mountain Rose. You bet they will fold. I'm telling you right now, you bet they will fold. This is okay. Say a blind defense thing, so that's a completely different thing.
No,
The C bet thing.
obviously, but
First of all, is like if you're getting coached to know where you should C bet and where you shouldn't C bet, is going to be found out if you play a sample of tournaments where you C bet a lot, right? Get those reviewed, then you will find out maybe okay here don't C bet. Uh, okay,
no,
or when you see bet,
the
don't
actually
double barrel.
the question is a little different. I mean,
Uh-huh.
obviously, like I completely agree with you. Like people don't see bet enough in tournaments,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is. But see betting for information, is that something like when you see bet is all the factors considered, or are you only considering the fact
No,
that
no, no,
if I
no,
bet
no,
I'll get information?
no, no. That's not the only factor. The factor is it's hard to make a hand in poker. You have a range advantage as an opener, always. People playing back at you on the turn, say if you see bet a lot, is again a myth. It's like something that is like people think like you have to balance because people are going to play back at you on the turn. If you don't have a good hand, fold on the turn after the c bet. Don't call. It's not only c betting, it's betting in general. So if you are defending an ace x from under the gun opener, and from blind you're defending ace deuce suited, you can check call the river flop. You should always bet fold the turn. But if you versus button, you should check call both flop and the turn. uh, so you see the difference, like it's
So
not
so
only just, so the
so basically,
betting is that.
there are a lot more factors, when you put out a cbet than just information. Like obviously, you
Yeah,
you you do a lot of study on what boards you should bet and how you should play
yeah,
hands, and how
yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
the thing is, it like turns out like an $11 tournament, see bet everything. Okay, I'll say a couple rule of thumbs. See bet every time you have the backdoor nut flush draw. Okay, every time you have the nut backdoor nut flush draw. So basically, you have ace four of hearts, and whatever the flop is, but it has one heart, bet. Definitely two ways, a multi, like three ways. Heads up, definitely bet. Uh, Multi-way, only bet hands that you have some kind of showdown value on. If it's checked to you, you should definitely take a stab at it. Because you'll see a lot of times, yeah, you don't want to get all in with like one pair in a multi-way pot versus someone who keeps calling you, but sometimes you'll just take it down. So all of those factors also are take into account. C betting for information was just an example of how do you get uh, more information. And if you haven't seen your cards, what would be the only way to win a hand if you we're playing poker? You don't obviously win it 100% of the time, but it definitely is checking. Definitely doesn't win you the hand right there, and you haven't seen your cards. So c betting is like a way to basically have this. Uh, it's aggressive. It's aggressive play. Aggressive post flop play is must, and tight pre flop is must. I think in poker, and if people are adjusting to you to your high c-bet percentage, think if it's a good player, you should be able to adjust to them. It's not that you balance by adjusting to them. You That is a passive way of adjustment. Okay, so you might lose a lot of value with aces, or mediocre hands. Like when I bet on a middle pair, a c bet, I'm not c betting to get a fold. I am targeting a range that will call worse hands. So I'm actually c betting for value. So when you have a hand that has value, why are you checking? You're not going, like, what's going to happen if he donks, if like he bets, if you check, you call, are you going to see bet on the turn then, or lead out on the turn? Like, it's just like going to make your hand so much more confusing. One of those reasons, obviously, and like I said, when you have ace king deuce four, I don't think even the best players are folding tens on that board. So bet hard. And also on river, vulnerable hands that can be like manipulated like a straight, but there's a flush on the board, you should always bet fold a bigger bet rather than a smaller bet, because a smaller bet you just don't know whether you were bluffed or not. But the bigger bet, you definitely know you need to fold, because you're going to get played back at less. And it seems to be working for me. And I am totally against that logic, because that is, again, in a top-down approach. It's working for me, so I should see bet. But it's not only that, it's actually like I'm also learning where not to see bet. But I have tournaments where I clock my stats and I send them to my coach, where I have 100% c bet over 250 hands, like 18 of 18 c bets. So I like that, because I know he'll like that. But there are places where he or he teaches me, and it's because of I was not c betting that I've learned where to c bet, where not to c bet, where to get tricky. I basically don't c bet to get tricky. A little bit tricky is what my general thing is. But usually, if they call, sometimes I'll double barrel. It depends on the turn card, but mostly I just give up. So what I'm actually saving is actually a bet on the turn is the same thing as c betting on the flop if you're protecting your hand. In my view, you are making the other person realize their equity by giving them a free hand. You're also losing value on aces by balancing it. So like if you take the Damarino hand, like I made a very huge bet on a very dry flop with aces, because that's exactly how weaker parts of my range play. Now, obviously, if I had 9-10 suited, I would still have bet, but I would have stopped on the turn with the six coming. It was six deuce six. It was six deuce four, two diamonds, then a six. If I didn't have aces, I would have shut down on the turn, and rightfully so. But since I had aces, I bet a bluffy bet, like a really big bet, kind of like something that a suited ace would play. You read the post, and like suited connectors, and then I shoved the turn, because that was a brick turn. That was a worse turn for a draw. And at worst, he has 6 outs, 3, ace and a king, at least. And so he made the call. So I induced the error from sizing. So it's not only the c bet, it's also the sizing, and a lot of other things that go into it. So when I say c bet, I'm not saying I'm always c betting. this much. I'm always c betting 40%. I'm always c betting 33%. I'm c betting depending on the board. Sometimes I am not c betting, uh, you know, but I am c betting a high percent of range. But it's not just to get information. But in totality of a hand, I think getting information is very important, and the most optimal way I find is to just bet. You know, um, because of the way the games are, because people are not going to fold sevens on king deuce four. People are calling light, people are floating, so you're getting value there. That you know, uh, by checking you might miss. Yeah, they might bluff, but when you put in the bet, the same thing. It's the same thing. You know, where or if you have a mediocre hand, you min raise the turn because you want to see a cheap showdown. It's the same thing as them putting a bet in the river on the river, but by min raising, you're kind of showing a little bit of strength and putting in their river bet for them. I've had a trip kings with a king high straight draw, a straight check. Maybe he thought I was going to bet. Maybe that's the reason why they check. But I saw a cheap showdown. I lost versus aces to his trip kings and king high straight. But the hand was really wet. The board was really wet. So I just min bet the turn because I still wanted to see the showdown because I had an overpair to the board. You know, so, and I actually had an out to a straight as well. The 10 would have given me a straight. So he had king 10. So, you know, he checked and I checked and he won. And I was like, wow, you know, and then I realized that what I did was basically put in the river bet for him. He got a little bit cautious, or he thought I am going to put in another bet and he's going to raise. So all of these things matter and all of these things happen while you're in the game, but always depends on stack sizes. So I've made a mistake of doing the same play, not realizing the guy has only like 1100 chips left behind. And now I have to call, even though I made this play only to see if the guy is going to be aggressive. I have to fold and making my river decision easy, because if he see bets again on the river, I'm folding the king jack because it's a mediocre hand. But I just want to see whether, you know, I can get a cheap showdown. On the long run, the min raise is always going to be smaller than the river sizing that they're going to, you know, put in. So, you know, things like that. So again, it gives you information. It gives the other person misinformation. And basically, there are no rules except for there are certain rules like you can't, you know, half pot. You can't you can't make it like, you know, 0.3 BB. You know, something like that, whatever, you know, the main rules that the dealer has to go last and all, of course, those are the rules. But within those rules, I think it's a lot more space to play logically and within the, you know, within your in the game flow.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's actually very well explained. And you should definitely continue coaching and charge for it, because I think there's a lot of value. On that note, I think I'll conclude. But I just wanted
Yeah.
to quickly ask you what what your future plans are like in the near future. Are there any goals? Are there
Yeah.
any sort of
Oh,
plans?
totally.
Like, if you just tell us
I
quickly.
always have medium term life plans. So I invested in Bitcoin, so I have some savings. Although now I wish I hadn't sold in back then, because now it just jumped up a huge amount. But whatever, you know, I made a profit out of it. My otherwise, it's not really making money. It's I had a broken back. I fixed that. After, I'm a lanky kind of guy, so when I try to bulk up, I don't really get muscle mass. I get a lot of, like, you know, fat. So I'm trying to work on that. My dad is very old, so whenever he has foreign business, like, I help him out in the company. But my goal is basically to get better at poker, to make money off it, but ultimately to see every rock of the planet that I'm hurtling in space on, you know, to travel, basically, is what my plan is, to make friends, connect, share passion, and that's it. And I think, and if you go more personally, maybe, yeah, add a little bit more strength in both my poker and my lifting. That would be like the materialistic goals. And in terms of, lifestyle goals, it would be traveling, seeing the world more. Because I think you have a life, and if you don't see the world more, you're missing out. Also, in terms of mentally, uh, going back to like the polarizing image, also getting better mentally at not letting feelings come up, uh, uh, and take over, emotional thinking take over logical thinking is something I
That's
really need to work on.
that's superb.
uh,
That's superb. I think
yeah,
I would love to. Yeah, I think they're lovely goals
yeah,
to have, and
yeah. I mean, I can link you to some of my articles on some other websites that are non-poker
you
related,
should, you should.
but they are kind of like talking about the same things. Also, articles that I read on websites that I read them, uh, that really like put things into perspective. Like a lot of people, like you just asked me life goals, right? A
Yeah,
lot of people have this thing of what is my purpose in life. Now that is, to me, is a very unmanageable question. What is a manageable question is, what can I do in the next hour that is important to me? Now you can manage that question pretty well, because if you can't find anything important to do in the next hour, you shouldn't even be thinking about your life purpose. So a lot of people, have this thing of what is my life purpose, and there's also a quote, that the most two important most days are when you find out when you were born, and when you find out what you were meant to do. Uh, but really, I think it's a good quote. It is a very good quote. But I think it's, again, if you're going to ask that question before you find out and keep asking that question, what am I meant to do? I think that's wrong, because that question is just so unmanageable. But if you keep asking, like, I'm right now here, okay, maybe I'm in my father's company. He's very old. I'm the youngest in my family. There's a big age gap between my eldest sister and me. It's like, if I'm there, what can I do in the next hour that will help, that is important to me and maybe the people who are around me at that time. uh, and I think that is how I live my life. Obviously, moment to moment, it's something that should be happening, but can't. You can't be like a stoic master of your emotions. But yeah, I like the fact that, like, those kind of questions kind of derail you from. But you should have goals. You should definitely have goals. If I didn't have goals, I would be lost. If I didn't have a goal to fix my back, I'd had not have fixed my back. But yeah, but like, there's a difference. Like, you can slip up a little bit and just turn your goals into your purpose, and then ask yourself, oh, I'm not achieving my purpose in life. I think instead you should just be like, next 1 hour, what is the most important thing? Is it sleep? Is it play another tournament? Is it work? Is it do something else? I think that's how you should live life. But yeah, if I could, I would just visit every country in the world, see under every rock, and that's it.
that's awesome. That's awesome. This probably is the longest podcast I've ever
Wow,
had. So
that's
we
crazy.
kind of
Yeah, yeah, we
making
have.
history in some sort of way. And obviously, thanks a lot, Vikram, for coming
Of
on and
course.
sharing your thoughts and sharing your life experience. And
Yeah.
I was very excited personally for this episode, because because
I
in a
am a
couple of
loudmouth. I will say that. I do speak and go on tangents a lot. So again, that is something I'm trying to improve. But yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I had a lovely time. I had a lovely
but
time.
but most of what you have to say is definitely it comes from a place of like good intentions and a good source of knowledge. So like
Right.
I totally love it. That's why I try to listen to most of what you had to say, because it was genuine advice, and I love that. And
Right.
I'd like to thank you for that.
Yeah,
And
of course. I
obviously,
like to thank you for I just messaged you for like thinking, just ask him like about his podcast. I didn't know that you would be like so willing to have me here. So it's the pleasure is all mine to be on here, and it was a lot of fun talking to you.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Also, I personally wanted to have you on the podcast because I was also one of the people who used to watch you do your Twitch streams, and I found you
right,
really interesting as a streamer, and I totally wanted to tell you that you should continue doing streaming, and
right.
do it on a regular basis.
The problem with streaming in India is like they don't have the Prime, so you can't get donations or anything. I don't want to get donations anyways. But one of the reasons, like I told you, is a game. Secondly, even when I'm not on streaming, I am kind of twitching. I am like moving around, and I am the same exact way. But what the stream does is it gives me maybe like a little bit, like I like to speak a lot. So I do a lot of lectures. I'll do a lot of lectures on health and fitness, for instance. So that is what I like. It started because Captain Kush, he has a stream, and I was just watching his stream because he's in Peru, and the timing it was like our morning, his also morning or something like that. And he was like, "Why don't you start a stream?" I was like, "Be right back," and I just started a stream. And so since then I've just been like playing, and it's actually daunting at first, but you have to have confidence in your game. You have to have confidence when you make a mistake. You just have to just say, yeah, I made a mistake there. You open the hand history back up, see where you made the mistake, and there's people to see. So what? Everyone makes mistakes. But when you're on the final table and anything, if it's hindering your game in the sense that you don't want to triple barrel bluff because you think people are watching, and if you get called, you're going to look like a fool, then you shouldn't stream. But it just it suits me. Sometimes it suits some of my sessions, not all of them. So Sunday it doesn't suit me because Sunday I want to play. I don't care about streaming or anything. But on like say a Tuesday, Wednesday, I might put it up there. It's a pretty ghetto stream though. Like it doesn't have any kind of like people keep like chatting on the chat like exclamation mark playlist, like songs I'm playing. I'm like, dude, just ask me. I'll tell you what I'm playing. I don't have that kind of.
No,
Uh,
but you should definitely do streaming, and I don't know. I think
I'm actually gonna maybe invest in Fiverr because they can make you a stream overlay. They can make you an overlay.
no, you should definitely invest in the overlay and definitely invest in the other stuff. And I think the only problem with your stream is that you don't do it regularly. Like you don't have a schedule, and once you have
Yeah,
that,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's
I think
another thing.
you can yeah.
Yeah, because I am every time I stream, I end up with 3,000 more subscribers than I did last time. So if I did it more often, definitely. And you're right. I think it's something that definitely makes me, just like when I sell action, it always makes me play well almost. It's because like you just have the extra motivation. You have other people invested in you. Same way, like having people watch you makes you play a little bit better, and stops you from slipping into YouTube or whatever, which can happen. Which can happen with me
Definitely.
too. So yeah, because I think you're right. I will try to stream more often. I'll try to get my stream up a little bit more, uh, more like get someone to like build it for me instead of trying it myself. because I am very good at Photoshop, but I'm not as good as some are, and also like a little bit about OBS. I don't understand a lot about it. So just get someone on
Yeah, you should
team
you should
viewer.
you should totally do that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's worth the
So
money.
so obviously we wish you best of the luck.
Yeah, thank
Best of
you,
luck,
thank you.
and we hope that you come on a podcast again. And also I'd like to I'd like to really thank the viewers who are actually watching this till the 2 hour and 2.5 hour mark, because
Right.
it's super motivating for you guys to watch it. And you're a hardcore Poker Islands fan, so thank you for being there. Obviously, I'll put the links to Vikram's blog in the description, so whenever you're watching this, you can check it out. And you can obviously find Vikram on Facebook. He's Vikram Singh. He's also on the Facebook group, so you can get in touch with him over there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Vikram. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Bye.